Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest for you today. We have with us Evan Tzivanakis. Evan is a strategic, revenue driven learning and development strategist, adjunct professor at the EU Business School in Switzerland, and is the author of Leading in VUCA Times. Evan, welcome to the show.
Nice to see you, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you doing, Evan?
Fantastic pronunciation on my surname.
Thank you. I do try. Um, before we do have a lot of interesting topics to cover today, but before we do dive into that, since you've written this great book, what do you think makes a great leader?
There it is. It's a great question. And actually, there are thousands of books written on the topic, so many definitions of leadership. For me, what makes a great leader is the mindset of leadership is a service. It's not about you, it's about them. It's about improving the lives and work of others. So if you look at a big scale, some of the best leaders out there, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, they wanted to improve the life of others, right? So this is what I think good leadership is about. Leadership is a service. It's not about you. If you come out to think it's all about you, this is not leadership. This is ego. Okay? I mean, you need to have a little bit of ego and pride in what you do, but the mindset shall be, how can I help you?
That's I really like that definition for sure because we've often heard lead from the front, not from behind, and things like that. Putting your team first or country first, whatever it may be, that's really the way to go. Thank you for highlighting that. Just another question too, as it relates to the show. How do you define procrastination, Evan, and what does it mean to you personally?
Wow, that's a great question. Procrastination often, I think, gets labeled as laziness or lack of discipline, right? But for many of us, especially in managerial roles or if you're running a business, I believe it's much deeper than that. And people don't see that procrastination can be a coping mechanism for perfectionism or even imposter syndrome. So you see, when I talk to some managers, with the work I do, executives, I find that procrastination is often a symptom of overthinking. So in other words, we sell ourselves the idea that we need to think more versus taking the first step. And, we delay the kind of difficult decisions because we feel the weight of responsibility sometimes. We don't want to let people down. Maybe we kind of stall, right? So hoping that more time will somehow make the answers clearer. And, it rarely does. Like, I'll give you an example. When I started my journey as a manager, Chris, back in the UK, 25 years old, I was thrown in the deep. Okay. I thought I'd had everything under control. I was eager. I was a little bit cocky, overconfident, determined. But I remember one particular project where it was a big project. I was tasked with leading a team to deliver a major nationwide sales enablement program. So instead of diving in and starting to execute, I told myself, you need more time to plan this out perfectly, So I spent hours. I remember it was I spent hours tweaking presentations, reading endless resources, brainstorming every possible scenario that could go wrong. But the things that I really needed to do, like engage the team, finish the PowerPoint presentation, and setting deadlines, were just sitting there. And one morning, my manager at the time, after 10 days, called me in her office and she says, Evan, how is your project going on? You've been working on for a while now, haven't you? And Chris, I kind of froze because I had all these ideas in my mind, but I had nothing to practically show. So I realized that I've been busy, but I hardly really moved the needle. So in other words, I had delayed the hard part, making decisions, asking for big feedback, putting things together, and taking risks. Now, look, the project was done, but it was rushed, stressful, and not as impactful as I wanted it to be. And from that project, you learn a lot from your failures, don't you, Chris, rather than your successes, right?
Mhm, mhm.
This project taught me an important lesson. Procrastination, it is not always about being lazy. I was not lazy, but sometimes it could be about fear of making mistakes, fear of not being good enough, and fear of maybe failing in front of your team. So what I suggest is start what you have now. Like, there will never be a perfect time. I see sometimes these people say, when I'm ready, we are married. When we are ready, we'll become parents. So what? Are you going to be one night sitting on your sofa and watching Netflix and the holy light will come down? You are now ready to become a parent. I mean, I think you know that yourself is never a right time. Is if you make it right.
No, and I really love that story and also that analogy because so many of us look at failure in I think in the wrong not the wrong way, in a not productive way. Because and actually I got this from another person I was talking to. Their daughter was in a dance school, dance choreography school in London, England. And the way that they defined fail was actually really interesting. They said it was an acronym. It's your first attempt in learning. So, I mean, you failed, but I mean, you were learning, it was your first steps, and that's how you get better. I mean, what do we learn from our successes? We learn that, oh, we like them.
Yeah. It's it's sometimes another thing that I realize, and I think some people misunderstand this. Procrastination isn't always about putting off everything. Sometimes we select what not to do, right? It is very selective. So you might be hyper productive in one area while avoiding another area. And which areas do we usually avoid? The area that feels uncomfortable or uncertain. Like, what is the hardest part when you want to go to the gym? Is to stand up from your chair and change. Once you're in your car, everything is easy. But the difficulty is to do this, right? To stand up.
You're right about that. Isn't that one of the laws of motion that applies to people too? An object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by another force, and an object at rest tends to stay at rest.
Exactly. Yeah, I think if I could give some share from my experience, I think it is better to start with the easiest piece. So if you have something to do, you could always break it into smaller, manageable steps. Why? Because if you begin with something simple, it will create momentum, it will create energy, and makes the bigger task feels less daunting. It's like, again, I'm going to give the gym example. What happens when you start to walk on the treadmill? Momentum, things are happening, and you want to do more and more and more. So at work or in your life, maybe you can start with the easiest piece. Another thing I could share is maybe set deadlines for yourself. Like, you need to know yourself. What kind of person are you? Like, for me, if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen, right? And it works for me because it gives me motivation and energy, and I like to plan my day and plan the week. So without a clear time frame, for me, my tasks tend to stretch indefinitely, or some of them not even happen. So I set my own deadlines, my own calendar. My email at my laptop and my phone are synchronized. So if I set an event on my calendar and my laptop, it would be on my phone as well. Okay. So, and another thing is perfectionism, and I really hate it. Like, what is perfect? What can you measure it with? And I think perfectionism is an excuse that fuels procrastination. Sometimes procrastination is an excuse itself. Allow yourself to produce a good, if you don't know how to do something perfectly, if you're going to, let's say you need to write a report, break it down into smaller steps. And rather than waiting to make it perfect, produce a good enough draft now, today, and refine it later as you go along. Because I think it is better to make progress than wait for perfection.
Oh yeah, what was the saying? Better done than not started. That sort of thing.
I mean, sometimes it's consistency. If you go to the gym today or you go out walk and you really walk well for 1 hour, or you run for 1 hour, you come back home, you take your t-shirt off, you see no difference. You're the same kilos, same fat. If you do that every day for a week, you will still see no difference. But if you do the same for 1 month, not 1 hour, half an hour every day, in 1 month's time, guarantee you will see difference. So what sometimes happens is intensity doesn't produce results. Consistency does.
So whatever we're doing, we need to be consistent for sure. And those even the smallest steps. So I often say that, there is no step that's too small, even to get up the momentum. And I know that sometimes it sounds a little silly, but if you have a task that's literally taking out the trash, I mean, you could have steps all day for that. Open the door, go outside. But the idea, I guess, would just be putting one foot in front of the other so that you have that momentum. And then as you're checking those little boxes in your head, you're noticing that you're getting closer to where you need to be.
Yeah, exactly. And what works for me at my work and in my day is I schedule blocks of time, and sometimes they are followed by a 5 minute rule. It works for me. So what do? I allocate specific time slots to do something. And while I do it, right now, I'm talking to you, right? I'm talking to you right now. My mobile notifications are off because we live. It's the ideal era to live. If you want to procrastinate, we live in a digital era. There are so many distractions. It's unreal. So many notifications. Somebody wants something and they tag you on Facebook. They tag you on Instagram. They put up a new video and you end up living somebody else's life. So what I do, I like to allocate specific time blocks. You can do half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour. Okay. The Pomodoro technique, maybe you've heard it before, right? Focused work followed by a short break, 5 minutes. Okay. I can grab a coffee or whatever, and then I continue. But during those 45 minutes, no distractions, nothing. When I work from home, it's very interesting. You know what I did in my house, in my door behind? I'm working from home. So it's my bedroom and home office, right? Quite standard when you work from home. So I have put outside my door, because we have a 6.5 years old son. I put some traffic lights. I cut it, 3 pieces of paper like traffic lights, green, orange, and red. And I said, unless it's something urgent, if you see green, green, you can come in anytime. If you see orange, please ask, because I might be writing something or something. Unless it's urgent, you fall down on something. But if you see red, you need to wait. Right now, I'm doing this, and outside the door, there is a red traffic light. And he understands that. I don't want to frustrate him. So, and it works. And then once I finish, I'll go play with him and so on. So, and another thing that I've learned how to do, actually, I've realized that sometimes we procrastinate even the smallest tasks, like something that can be done in 1 minute. Like, you know what I was bad at? Coffee cups on my desk, and my wife can't find any more. But how many times do I go back and forth every day? 10, maybe 10 times, 20 times. I can easily grab them. By the end of the day, I end up having 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 coffee cups here. What you can do, the 2 minutes rule. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. And often we delay small tasks without a reason, which adds up over time. Is adding up over time.
I like that coffee cup example for sure. But, do you think it's that, those tasks that are so small, we just don't give them importance and we just figure, oh, we can do those anytime and that's why we're kind of leaving them last?
It can happen. It can happen, right? It can happen. I understand that. But I prefer, since I'm going go get a coffee, I might as well take them rather than run out of them. And then I have to spend 5 minutes washing one because I'm not going to wait until the end of the day to put the dishwasher. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
You also mentioned something really interesting about that, the traffic light system there. And how can you do that in a work environment? Because I believe you're familiar with the term fire drills. So, everything is important. You get 1,000 notifications, your project manager or your or even an accounting manager, whatever. You're sitting there trying to do something and you get, 10 urgent messages. This is urgent. This is urgent. This is urgent until nothing becomes urgent.
It might be urgent for them. I understand, but then you need to decide what urgent is for you, and you need to draw the line. And you know, if like, okay, if you are compiling a report or something, or if you are having a Zoom call at work, now we are speaking again. My Outlook, I've turned it off. So right now, only the platform that we are recording is on. So I try to eliminate every possible distraction, or let's call it distraction, right? Work tool. It's a very valid point what you're saying. And actually, a lot of people out there, that's the reason they don't want to work in the office because they get too many distractions. And that's why some of them that like to work from the office, they love a hybrid work environment where they work in isolation. I have described earlier, when you work in blocks, they leave it for when they are working from home. And when they are working in the office, they are doing other tasks. And in the same time, they can talk to colleagues and all that. Unless you are working in an office where you can close your door, right? So it's about finding your own system, what works for you. It's a very much tailor-made approach, I think. And it's about understanding yourself, be self-aware, and understand what works for you.
And I love that you bring up, what works for you, because I can't tell you how many times somebody has come to me or written me a message saying, Chris, I don't get it. I'm blocking my calendar, or I'm using motion, or I'm using focus, or I'm using, was it focus mate? And I still can't seem to get things done. And so, they sometimes feel like something's wrong with them because this system isn't working for them. Everybody's different, right? And everybody has things that work for them and don't work.
And I think, I remember and I'm still working on, by the way, it's always work in progress, right? It's always work in progress. And it's not always easy. It's easy for me to say don't procrastinate, but it's not easy, right? It's not easy. So what I use the Eisenhower matrix. Another thing, maybe, I take a piece of paper every day, very traditional. I'll show it here for you. I'll show it here. It works for me. So I take a piece of paper every day and I divide it into 4 quadrants. So on the top left corner, top left quadrant, just give me a second. I'm creating one now and I will reuse it for tomorrow. On the top left quadrant from my side is decide. So I'm going to write down all the things that I need to do today. My day, bring son to school, meeting, pick him up, for example, go gym, whatever, right? And other things. And then the ones that I must do, I will move them, like pay a bill. Maybe I won't do it today. So the remaining things, I might delegate. Delegate means give it to somebody else at work, for example, or move on to the next day. And there might be 1 or 2 tasks that I said, nah, totally delete them. So that gives me the opportunity. Why I like this tool? It's practical, it's easy. And rather than looking at 10 things that you should do, you now have more clarity and you're going to focus more on the critical things, 3, 4 things that you should do today. And then maybe some of the delegate things tomorrow, they will be in the do list.
Well, I imagine some of the things in the delegate list might move to the doing list if for whatever reason the delegation didn't work out.
They could do, or in the delete, or in the wife list, they have another, maybe you can add one more wife.
Well, there you go. That's
There you go.
that's a good one. And some of the things that would go into the delete, just for everybody's clarity here, the things that you have to quote unquote do or that you feel like you should do, those things that make it into delete, do they ever get on another list again, or are they just deleted?
Maybe I give you an example. Maybe I will be responsible for a project, but due to overload, it's on my list. But then in the morning, I sit down with another manager and says, look, I will take this as my responsibility. Then I delete it. For example, it's case by case. Maybe it could be another personal thing. I need to bring the car to the mechanic, but then my wife tell me, oh, on the way to go pick up to pick up the kids from the school, I can pass from the mechanic, so I delete it. So it's really case by case. They could go to delegate. So it's really case by case. But what is the point of this simple thing is to get clarity, because sometimes we think I have so many things to do today. Actually, we realize the most critical things to do are two or three.
No, you're right. In the course of a day, the things that, I'm just thinking of my own schedule, the things that absolutely positively, quote unquote, have to be done today, normally only about two or three things. But with that caveat, sometimes we can get to shuffling. So, what we might say is, okay, we have to plan this, and then we'll keep putting it off there. So one of the things that I looked at, and I don't know if you do the same thing, is if you have a task that's on your list and say it gets moved around 3 or 4 times, what do you do to try to get that task done or out of the way?
It depends on the task, right? On the criticality. Maybe I will do it. I live in a country where I live in Germany, right? I live in a country where communication, when it comes to bills, school, everything comes by post.
Hmm.
Everything. So, digitalization, it's a work in progress. So why I'm saying this? So why? Because you need to decide on what you're going to do with different tasks. And the decision is yours, right? And at the end of the day, it's not that you are judged by your decisions, but your day, what you're going to do. So maybe you just deleted it, or maybe you just move it on, or maybe you delegate it, or maybe you say, this is not relevant anymore. I'm not going to go to the gym for the next 2 months because it's winter, it's cold, and I'm going to take a break. So it's really, I don't have a specific answer because it's really case by case, right? And if you keep dragging things, it's your mistake. It's my mistake if I keep dragging it and moving it from one quadrant to another. It looks like and actually we are good. People are good in time management. I think the problem is we don't know how to prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
What is critical and what is important, because something that is important could be done tomorrow. I know now, next year I am teaching again at the EU Business School, and I'm going to be teaching 5 courses, management, leadership, and all that. And I need to do some paperwork. I need to create some curriculum and all that. But I still have a couple of months, maybe 1.5. So I'm not going to do it this week.
Okay. And when you're working with these managers and companies, I mean, again, it goes back to priorities. Is that something that you also do? You help them look at their priorities and see how to prioritize?
Yes, yes. I actually have a 3 months, usually 12 sessions, time management coaching program. Okay. I had one client that told me, I have many clients for this program, but I had one client that told me specifically, Evan, because of this, you saved my marriage, right? Why? Because he said, I realized I was not bad at time management, but you helped me learn how to prioritize. So it's a very good self-reflection. It's a very good self-reflection framework and exercise. And actually, I have them. And actually, this client, he went then on LinkedIn. He's actually from the US. He's a director at a nonprofit organization. He went on LinkedIn. You can see it. I'm not going to say his name. And gave me and wrote something about me. And he said, "Then work with me on my time management, because I was struggling to manage all my responsibilities in my nonprofit role. He helped me realize I was actually quite good at time management, but I needed to better prioritize the work I was choosing to do and choosing to delegate every day. He helped me set more realistic goals for myself in terms of what I can get done in a day, which has helped me focus on one task at a time, therefore work more effectively. I recommend working with Evan. So, it's really, it's down to you, it's down to me. Nobody will do it, and we are humans, Chris. We have feelings, we have emotions, we have moods, we have weather to deal with. I mean, we are not robots, so it's not always going to be perfect, but,
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things too, especially in today's society, is that we're all told that we need to be busy to be productive, right? And as you said, we are human beings. I mean, we're not human doings all the time. So, we have to take, like you said, those blocks, whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's an hour at some point to recharge those batteries, right?
it's, being busy and being productive could be totally different. I know a lot of people who are busy but produce zero. Have you ever heard of the headless manager running around like a headless chicken? So being busy and being productive is very, very different. Being productive means being able to move from one step to another. And some people, yes, they need help with it because naturally they don't know how to prioritize. And actually, in the psychological work I did about this time management and prioritization, it could go back to their upbringing because they grew up in a very stressful environment. So,
Well, yeah, and then there's always those things like, again, distractions like new shiny, or a lot of sayings, old English sayings give credence, I guess, to this phenomenon too, because the squeaky oil gets or what is it? The squeaky
yes,
wheel gets the grease. So
yes.
whatever's loudest isn't necessarily the biggest priority, but it's the loudest, so you just want to get rid of it.
Yeah. And we live in a very, commercial era. We get Jones, he's doing this, she's doing this, I need to catch up and all that. But if you always try to keep up with the Joneses, you know what I mean? If you always try to keep up with your neighbors, they're doing this, they're doing that, you end up living other people's life, as I mentioned before. So it's about being grounded and being yourself and understanding yourself. And I know, like for myself, sometimes when I'm really tired at the end of the day, I don't have much patience because I can feel it. And I don't want to be like that. So I need to do something to regroup and refocus, right? And, if I could go back and give to my younger version of myself some advice or some tips, I would say, start when it comes to doing things, start messy, take the first step, even if it feels imperfect. Because I think sometimes a lot of things that we do, especially at work or learning something new or doing something else, is is not about knowing all the answers. It is about having the courage to act, take the first step, and learn along the way. Chris, if you see it maybe from a managerial point of view, maybe we can look at it a little bit like that. If you're running a business or if you're a manager, procrastination is not a failure. It's a signal, right? It's telling you something maybe about your fears, about your priorities, or even the systems that you're working with. Maybe you are working with the wrong systems, right? So instead of beating yourself up, get over it, get curious, and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I not doing this? And what's the real fear here? And sometimes you'll be surprised that the answer will be comfortability.
Well, I mean, it's not that surprising because I mean we're creatures of comfort. I mean we don't like to be uncomfortable. So it seems pretty obvious that you know at some level, some base level, we're definitely uncomfortable with whatever we're not doing. But I like that you brought up the whys, because that saying, when the why is high, your cost is low. If you don't have a reason you're doing anything, especially from like a manager's perspective, being able to instill that in your team can increase productivity too, right? Because if your team doesn't understand why they're doing something, I mean, I just had this discussion with somebody today. We had a discussion about a development program. There has to be a map with locations. The client said, okay, we need the map done this way. Great. So the communication breakdown comes back, I guess, when I'm speaking to this individual and the developer says, well, I've developed the map this way because that's the way it works. And so the developer didn't understand, why it was important that, the map be designed in a specific way. And so now it's put the project back by about 2 weeks, give or take. So definitely communicating that why is important.
It's very important. And if you know the why, you'll know why you're not doing it. Like, when there is conflict at work, one mistake that some managers do is they avoid dealing with it. If there is conflict between 2 or 3 employees, a lot of managers do not deal with it because they are scared. They don't know, they are never trained how to deal with it. Maybe a fight, maybe arguments, maybe emotions. So they avoid it and they procrastinate it. But if you avoid as a manager to deal with conflict at workplace, you might end up having people resigning. According to research, 66% of first-time managers, people that get promoted for the first time in their career, they fail within 18 months of being a first-time manager. There are a few reasons why they fail. The number one reason is they never got trained how to manage, because being a salesperson, being an engineer or a coder is a very different mindset and skill set that if you become a sales manager, if you become a team leader of engineers, if you are become a team manager of coders. So a lot of people procrastinate and avoid to do things because they're scared they are not good at it. Because why? They never got trained. I had a client before, he had some financial difficulties at work with his company, and he was procrastinating paying bills because he was scared to see the amount.
I can see that. That actually leads into something there with managers too. Oftentimes, I was speaking that there's another theory from another individual. They were saying that a lot of that, especially when it comes to managerial positions, I want your thoughts on this, was that it fell into one of two buckets, right? It was the competence bucket, which you just discussed, right? The not knowing how or being trained how. But there was also kind of the social aspect. So, I mean, if you're working with, Bob, Jenny, Craig, Susan, whoever, and then you get promoted to be a manager, that changes the social structure a little bit. How do you tackle that?
Even if me and you are colleagues and you get promoted,
Yes, it changes the social aspect a little bit.
let's say me and you are colleagues, same level, I get promoted, you become my report, right? I become your manager. It does, but then you both need to understand that there is a level of professionalism, and even though we are friends, there are some things and some level of hierarchy and something that we need to do, and we cannot allow that friendship to work against us. Actually, the fact that we were friends and we still are, it should work on our benefits so I can become a better manager and maybe you can become a better employee and then you can also become a manager. So, we cannot have egos now in the middle. If I start to become more egoistical, if you start to become a bit more jealous, if we put emotions inside, I think we automatically both lose. So we both need to understand that there is a fine line, a professional line, but sometimes when we're at work, we have to communicate, talk, execute professionally as if we don't know each other. When we go for a beer is a different thing. And this is something I learned in the UK. In the UK, it's a bit, the culture is a little bit, I'm not sure if it's in the US, but in Asia, it's not really often. In the UK, you can go out with your manager, get totally drunk. He will get pissed. He can get worse than you on a Friday or Saturday night. But when it comes Monday morning, we don't discuss about this. I'm a human. You're a human. Friday night, Saturday night is outside work hours. We are equal. But when it comes back to work, please respect, I respect, you respect. It's a different environment. But in some cultures, they will mix it all up. And they will tell you, man, You were drinking and getting drunk with me on Saturday night, and now on Monday morning you are telling me what to do. So
Yeah, that's interesting because it's definitely frowned upon actually in many company organizations in the U.S. and Canada at least. When you go out with a client, as an example, if it's a client meeting, then there's certain rules, but then you're not allowed to see that client outside of that setting for that reason because again, you may behave differently, and I guess I don't know. I just think we make business too complicated sometimes.
you are right. I think things are sometimes are more simple than they should be, right?
That's why we have people like you to help us navigate this.
No, I'm just sharing my experiences, and this is what I did in my book as well. I just wrote 40 chapters. You can find it on Amazon. I don't really care if I sell it. I mean, there are people buying it, but I didn't write it to make money. Actually, to make money from books, you need to sell 1 million copies because the publisher or the Amazon, they will keep a part of it, right? So it's just my motivation to share some of my experiences to hopefully help some managers. So I didn't do it for commercial purposes, right? So I'm just sharing my thought and my experience. And, when you are 25 and 40, it's a bit different, right? You learn from work, and you learn from success and from failures and from, yeah, from different things.
Well, this has been a really enlightening and a really excellent conversation. I mean, we are coming up pretty close to the time. Is there anything that I didn't ask that maybe you feel I should have asked, or something that we should have covered that we didn't cover today?
Good question. Let me think. No, I think maybe as a last thought, when it comes to procrastination, because this is your podcast, and that's the topic of your podcast, and the theme of our main discussion is the key. Again, try to recognize it. Try to recognize what you are or you are not doing. Take small steps. It's never going to be a perfect time, and turn it into a tool for growth instead of a reason to feel stuck.
I like that. I like that. It's a really good note to end on. And with that being said, please feel free to check out Evan's book on Amazon. We're going to have the link in the description. And thank you once again for tuning in. And if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just try and be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.